Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon. This is Senate Committee on Institutions. It is Friday, March 14th, and we are discussing S71, an act relating to consumer data privacy and online surveillance. And we have three witnesses, and then after that, we will have a committee discussion and a possible vote so that we can get this out of here before a crossover, which our deadline is today. And so a couple of our members will be heading out for another meeting temporarily, but we'll still have a quorum with you two being staying here. Okay, and me, obviously, yes. Okay. So let us get going. Our first witness is Robbie Adler, Chief Strategy Officer of Faraday. Mr. Adler, thank you for being here. I guess we can introduce ourselves.
Senator Russ Engel, Essex District.
Senator Joe Major, Windsor District.
And Rob Plunkett, the Bennington District.
Sam Bevis, Orleans District.
And Wendy Harrison, Wyndham District. And I think we got.
Oh, hi, Emma Paradise with Common Good Vermont.
Okay, I'm sorry.
My name's Emma Paradise. I'm with Common Good Vermont.
Common Good. Okay, yeah, great. And then might as well go ahead.
Sure. Drake Turner representing Ethnic and Consumer Ordinance.
Jessa Barnard, Vermont Medical Society.
Mary Hayden, Vermont Association of Area Agencies on Aging.
Terrific, thank you. And you'll be testifying soon. Okay, so Robbie, if I may call you Robbie,
yeah,
you have the floor.
Great, thank you so much. And I know there folks had to kind of scramble things to allow me to testify, so I appreciate the accommodation and everyone just taking a time. I'll be brief. Just wanted to kind of share my thoughts about the emerging data privacy legislation. I've done my best to kind of follow this. It's not my day-to-day job. My understanding, I just learned, is that S93 has now been voted into as a replacement for what was S71. So I might reference in my testimony S93, but thank you for maybe making that switch, because I'm supportive of what was S93. But just to start, I'm the co-founder, chief strategy officer of Faraday. We're a 12-year-old company. We're headquartered in Waterbury. We currently employ around 25 people in the state. Our company provides software, is a software platform that uses artificial intelligence to predict customer behavior. We've received funding from a variety of local sources, including Fresh Tracks Capital and the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies. My goal today is to share just kind of our experience as a company in complying with the various state data privacy laws, and share a few recommendations I believe that will ensure greater protection for Vermonters, maximize compliance amongst organizations, while limiting the financial impact on affected entities like Faraday. For context, Faraday in the realm of data privacy and our work with our clients who are largely consumer-facing brands, we operate as a data processor. In the California language, this is known as a service provider, and S71, S93, we are a data processor, meaning data is sent to us by our clients, and we have strict obligations in terms of security measures and the use of that data. So my first recommendation is just that Vermont adopt a data privacy law that is in line with other New England states versus introducing novel policy. It's often, I think, posited that data privacy laws are a mechanism for reining in the abuses of big tech. I definitely agree with this, that well-crafted legislation could do this. But it's, I think, also very important to note that big tech is often the best position to deal with novel policy due to just having far more resources, including like an army of in-house lawyers. The harder and more complex or novel these laws are, the harder it is for companies like Faraday to comply. And in many ways, I think entrenches big tech and like tech monopolies further, because they can afford the cost of compliance versus smaller companies like Faraday can't. And to put some numbers to this, Faraday, we pay between $450 to $1,000 an hour in legal fees when we're consulting with our privacy lawyers. We spend tens of thousands of dollars ensuring compliance with the first state privacy laws that came into effect. So California, Virginia. And I just contrast this with our experience with the recently passed privacy laws in New Hampshire. So the privacy law in New Hampshire largely mirrored Connecticut's state data privacy law. And what this means for us as a company is our existing documents, our processes, our security practices already largely ensured compliance with this law. It had negligible financial impacts on us from a legal cost perspective and from just an overall resourcing perspective in terms of getting documents placed in the right place, ensuring all of our existing contracts, were in line. So just a notable difference between novel or emergent approaches versus, approaches that largely adopt existing policy from other states. One novel concept I know has been very hotly debated at length is a right to private action. Faraday does not support this, as I believe the vast majority of businesses in Vermont. We believe that the Attorney General's office is well positioned to act in the best interest of Vermonters and kind of weigh any tension that might exist between data privacy and the wherewithal of Vermont businesses and our economy. A PRA would have immediate impacts on businesses via increased insurance costs tied to increased liability. And while I can, at least on my side, very clearly see how this action, the cost of having a PRA, I think it's less clear to me how a PRA meaningfully actually improves privacy protections for Vermonters. I understand how it benefits the legal lobby, but in terms of, if the root goal here is better privacy protections for Vermonters, I think our Attorney General's office is well positioned to do that while enforcing a well-crafted piece of legislation. Second recommendation is just to ensure the thresholds are appropriately set to avoid ensnaring small businesses in the state. And just as an example, if you consider a mid-sized Vermont restaurant as an example of why this matters, such a business is regularly going to capture personal information through benign activities such as online ordering, adding you to a wait list, email newsletter, providing access to their Wi-Fi. A threshold of $10,000, $20,000 to 10 or 20,000 Vermonters could easily result in businesses like this being ensnared and forcing them to have to become what is deemed a controller and comply with the provisions that are applicable to controller compliance. So my understanding is S93, I believe that's now S71, largely aligns with my recommendations. The threshold is 100,000. It does not have a PRA. It largely mirrors what we've seen in Connecticut and New Hampshire. And so I just encourage senators to support this. I do want to very clearly state I am in favor of Vermont passing a data privacy law. I just ask that it's done in a way that's consistent for organizations like Faraday across other states. And I believe actually in doing this will increase compliance amongst impacted entities. And the benefit of increased compliance is improved privacy protection for all Vermonters. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for being here. So you'll take questions, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, happy to take any questions.
Good. Do y'all questions?
Thank you, Robbie, for testifying.
Yeah, thank you so much for squeezing me in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So you're a processor. You're a data processor. Cool.
Yes.
We haven't.
I'm the face of data processing. Yeah.
And you mentioned that. So you deal already with all of these various laws.
Correct. Yes.
So you have to keep count of like which customers are under which laws, I guess, right?
Yeah, for us, we are regulated by, if we have a client who's in Virginia, we are regulated by the Virginia state privacy law. If our client is in California, it's CCPA. And then some clients often will many of our clients have customers across multiple states, right? And so, we need to process the data for their California customers and their Virginia customers. So the more there's variance there, the more, complexity there is to our job and the job of our clients, who are often controllers, meaning they sit on sufficient data to
Right.
customer base.
That, okay, it's good to talk to somebody who has knowledge in that. So do you have contracts with all the controllers?
Yes, definitely. Any client who is sending us data, we 100% have contracts, and for the vast majority of them, we have what's known as a data processing addendum or agreement, which specifically governs it with even more detail, like what we can do with the data, and we documenting that if they get certain compliance requests, we need to support them in that.
Right, and that protects you and them.
Yes, definitely protects, but it's for both parties' benefit.
Right. And so then how long have you been in business, did you say?
12 years.
Okay. And you have 25 people employed? Are those people in
in
Vermont or?
Yeah, 25 in Vermont. Yeah.
Okay. So the 100,000 threshold that is in 71, that's Vermont customers. Do you have
Correct.
any clients that have 100,000 Vermont customers?
Off the top of my head, I do not know. I would be pretty surprised if we do. For a while, for example, Faraday actually worked with the state of Vermont, and so in an example like that, perhaps. For a while, we worked with a large insurer in the state. I won't mention their name, but they possibly did. And we've worked with credit unions in the state. We have a sufficient number of members. But at the present moment, no, we don't have any brand that's particularly has a broad presence within the state.
Okay. And then are there other companies like yours in Vermont?
Who would be considered a processor?
Yes.
Yes, I would definitely think so. I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine folks like Dealer.com, Union Street Media, who does a lot of work with realtors. I'm trying to think. There's a company called not OMD. It's a health tech company. But yeah, I would suspect that there are definitely so we're part of the way I became aware of what's going on here is we're part of the VTTA, which is like a group, an association of hold on, sorry. Sorry, I have my 3-year-old is homesick today.
It was either a dog.
Yeah, no, not my dog. My sick kid. So yeah, no, there are the VTTA might be a good resource for that. It's just a association of tech companies in the state.
Right, I'm familiar with that. Okay, cool. All right. So that's very helpful. So anybody else have any questions come to mind? All right, anything else you think we should know?
No, just thank you all so much for being thoughtful and considering kind of what was S93 and making a switch over to that. I believe it's a good law, and I'm supportive of it.
And if you could just send us written testimony.
Yes, of course.
That would be great.
Happy to do that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Take care.
Okay, so now we have a live person. I mean, he's live too, but an actual in person. So, yes. Mary Hayden, Executive Director, Vermont Association of Area Agencies on Aging.
Yes, so I don't have to put that on the record.
I guess not. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. We are here, I'll be very direct with you, to support, S93 and not in support of S71, or what we work on those statutes. So I always like to start out, especially with committees I haven't spoken to before, with sort of a just quick view of what we do. And so Vermont has 5 area agencies on aging. We provide free supports and services to enable Vermonters, older Vermonters, and some disabled adults to be able to age in a healthy way at home and live in the home and place of their choice. So our services include free long-term care case management, home delivered meals, Meals on Wheels, commonly known as community meals, caregiver supports, information and assistance, helplines, Medicare counseling and education and outreach, wellness activities and programs. We also help and assist people to apply for benefits that you're aware of, like the 3 Squares Vermont fuel assistance, housing assistance, Medicare low-income programs, as well as housing and food programs like 3 Squares, etc. Many of our services are funded by Medicaid and the Older Americans Act, which are federal. We also receive state and federal grants, which are regulated by, say, Dale in Vermont, DEVA, DCF Economic Services for programs like 3 Squares, and a couple of other things. But we also are a Medicaid provider, so CMS is also our regulatory. Administration of Community Living, which is the federal department under HHS that administers the Older Americans Act programs that we have under grants. Department of Veterans Affairs for our veterans programs, AmeriCorps, and all of these funders and regulators require us to maintain privacy and security for our clients. We're not a data broker. We provide free services. We are not for profit. All our agencies are separate not-for-profits. We don't profit from or benefit from or have any incentive to sell or exploit the data of our clients. Only one of our AAAs, which is the largest AAA, which covers Grand Isle, Franklin, Chittenden, and Madison counties, has a compliance officer. The 4 other AAAs do not have their own compliance officers. Those duties are sort of spread out amongst their staff, so much smaller. So as I said, as Medicaid providers, we are covered by HIPAA. We have to protect obviously we're covered by HIPAA for protected healthcare information, but we also provide services that are non-HIPAA protected. But under HIPAA, agencies such as ours are allowed to designate themselves as, it's confusing because it's called non-hybrid, but what it really means is by default, you're all HIPAA. So we can protect all our data under HIPAA. That's also more cost efficient and effective way to run our organizations because we serve people with the highest level of protection. And it's also just more administratively works. It's more efficient for us. So to be clear, we are applying our HIPAA standard to all our client data currently. And that includes the data that's not necessarily health related. So a lot of our work is similar to what Jessica Barnard mentioned to you about social determinants of health. I think of us as providers of social and health related services. So it's a wide range of services that we provide. And as HIPAA covered entities, we are responsible for complying with HIPAA. The similar things that you heard from Jessica yesterday, we have to do and we do. So creating HIPAA compliant notices for privacy protection to inform clients about our practices with respect to their healthcare information, how we use it and how it's disclosed. Clients can request their records. They can direct us to send their records to a third party. They can request amendments to those agreements, and they can also ask whether any other third party is receiving their protected information. Our staff members receive training when they're onboarding as new staff and also ongoing training throughout the year. We audit and monitor our information systems. We conduct risk assessments. We respond to all privacy and security concerns. We have established privacy and security policies and procedures, and we don't use information systems until after they've been vetted for their ability to comply with all of these matters. You've heard testimony that from your national consulting witnesses, I believe, or at least one of them, that HIPAA is confusing, or like federal privacy laws are confusing, like HIPAA FERPA. It is confusing, but we do it. We know how to do it, and we audit it and we monitor it and we approve it as needed. If it does get updated from time to time, at the federal level, new rules and regulations are issued that we comply with. I think what would be extremely confusing would be adding the state level of compliance to this as you would under S74. So if we were in a situation of having to do that, the impact would be really significant in terms of our ability to find the resources and create the compliance necessary to, on the one hand, to separate out very precisely what is PHI from non-PHI, and then create separate notices for clients who may have both things.
So personal health information.
Right. A PHI, personal health, protected health information.
Protected health.
And most of our AAAs do not have the resource to hire the legal and compliance officers necessary to implement something like that. We're under some financial strain right now, not just because of the sort of dark clouds we're all hearing about on the federal level. Potential cuts to Medicaid, potential cuts to food programs, potential cuts to Medicare. We've been underfunded or flat funded because of the CR budgeting preference that occurs in Washington, D.C. So we are really hurting, and we are also serving one of the oldest states in the country with a growing demographic of older people. So we are not clear on why we could be required to devote resources to creating a whole separate level of compliance when we are already in compliance with HIPAA and protecting all of our client data. I just wanted to also mention that, I've heard from other non-for-profits, some of them very small in Vermont, didn't even have the resources to hire a lawyer to review these bills. The 100-page bill from last year, these, I think, 65-page bills. I think S93 is 45 pages, if I have that correctly. And I'm not sure they even understand what they could potentially do as small non-for-profits and whether or not they would financially be able to even survive that kind of compliance obligation, or a trial lawyer coming after them for a minor violation with a demand letter. So to sum up, as I stated when I started, we think that S93 is a very fair and reasonable bill for a state like Vermont. It balances the interests of consumers with the interests of businesses and not-for-profits, so that we can all thrive and hopefully protect our consumers at the same time. I also would advise and welcome, we're willing to participate in any studies that may happen. I think that any kind of outreach, education, strategies or tips that are available to businesses and nonprofits to do this better, we would welcome and would be happy to work with anyone on those things. As I said, serve on a study committee, a work group, whatever, board. And certainly if, some of the extreme hypothetical things we heard that might happen, which are not happening as far as we know, examples of what could happen. Certainly, if something does happen, we are very willing to respond to it and work with all of you and the AG's office and other players on the state to get it right. So in sum, we do support S93, strongly recommend that be adopted by you all today, if possible. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you. Certainly, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I always like to provide you with a copy of our service map because it helps you for your own reference, and as well as for your constituents. And it's a little confusing where we all are and what town we specifically covered. And if you ever need any assistance, to
Thank you. Do you have anyone have questions?
I know, he's gonna bounce.
Okay.
Very well.
Yeah, and senior solutions.
Driver.
Yeah.
I was drive meals over. Oh, happy to hear it.
Not during the session, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can take that on, very soon.
We do it on Mondays.
I do Friday morning.
Okay, there you go.
Outside.
Friday. So I just have a couple questions. Just, you said that you are, all of your data is HIPAA or HIPAA type or HIPAA level protected? Is
HIPAA
that-
level protected.
So that's a lot.
Yeah, so we made the decision
Yeah.
to protect it all at the HIPAA level. Because otherwise we would be creating different ways of protecting our data and that made the most sense. And it also provides the most protection for people.
Right.
So that's how we have proceeded and that's our council has advised us to do that for many years.
And so you do that for all of the agents, because you said that some of them don't have
They don't have
compliance
compliance,
officers, but
right. So-
you as the higher level do,
Well,
or you have the ability to
They-
be in compliance.
they don't have full-time compliance officers,
Right.
but they comply by adding it to other staff duties. And so they're all on the same page in terms of compliance. What they don't have and probably would need if something like a 71 got passed or something like it. I can't imagine how they could function without having their own compliance officers to take on a lot of the extra work that would be needed. It's not just compliance officer, but it's a lot more training. And the notices you have to write, someone has to write them, someone has to review them. They have to be written in plain language and be effective. They also have to be communicated to clients. Another concern I have is that this could really interfere with client relationships as well, because with this population, the older population, they tend to not request help until it is desperately needed.
Mhm.
It's just how they are culturally. It's changing a little with the younger baby boomers, like people like me, but I think for the most part, when they come to us, they are really in need of services. And we do have to talk to them about things like HIPAA and compliance and privacy and security. But I'm just imagining a case manager having to add all of this on top of it when they're trying to establish a productive relationship, trust and rapport with a client who needs services and needs to sign on for those services. Really concerned that it might really interfere with that whole process and
Mhm.
ability to connect with the client and not unduly scare them.
Right, right. And it's really helpful to know what your concerns are. And then later in the process, it's in the house, you can, I would suggest that you go there too. And then we'll be
Yeah, I'd be
more
happy to.
specific
Yeah.
conversations. So have you had data breaches? You
Not that
know?
I'm aware of. I
Okay.
mean, we've had ransomware, like
Yeah,
everyone. That's really all I'm aware of, and we've really, like most organizations out there, really protected well against those happening. And I was aware of one or two. Those hit even small organizations, so
oh,
it's
totally.
certainly possible you can have those, but I think that, I think as a country, because there's a strong incentive for businesses, right, to protect against data breaches, I think that we're all doing a lot better on that. We haven't had them in a while.
Right. And how many clients do you have?
Well, we served over 40,000 people last year.
Okay.
So I don't know if I can precisely say how many clients.
Yeah.
I have something else somewhere that could break it down for you.
All right. Well, so you're below it sounds like you would be below the threshold.
It depends on what we have to include in account too. I mean, as Jessica, I think, mentioned as well, when you have to preserve records for a number of years. So do you count every year when you count? Are you counting all these years? Are you counting new records? So that's something else that's sort of a question we've had
Right.
out there.
Right.
So as you know, records retention is part of what we're required to do as well.
Sure.
So we would have to sort of calibrate that.
Right. And education is critical to this. Whatever happens, there needs to be
Yeah, we're
education. And we
perfectly
talked
willing-
about that last year too.
Yeah, we're perfectly willing to participate in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we still have quorum. And so the next witness is Nathaniel White Joyal, president of Scout Digital.
Hi.
So Nathaniel, were you here when we all introduced ourselves?
I was, yep. I just had my
Okay.
camera.
Okay, great.
So first of all, thank you for accommodating me today. And I really do appreciate the thoughtful work on data privacy that's been done here. especially the changes that we've seen made to sorry, from S93 to S71 and the removal of the private right to action. So I'm the president of Scout Digital. We're a digital marketing agency in Burlington, Vermont. We have been around for the last 5 years, but before that, I had another agency, as did my business partner. And digital marketing has always been something that we've done pretty successfully. And our expertise in digital marketing does tend to focus on local businesses. We also do work with national, international businesses as well, but especially for smaller businesses that are here in Vermont, digital marketing plays a major role in their growth. And I don't think it's a well-kept secret that 90% of the businesses or something along those lines in Vermont have 20 employees or less. So small businesses, is what drives employment, not just in Vermont, but across the country. And so that's something that we really believe in supporting. And, we've worked with brands like, Healthy Living, Vermont Frames, Champlain College, and the compliance piece of digital marketing remains challenging, right? We are constantly having to shift based on where our clients are, just like Robbie talked about earlier. But bringing in, a private right to action, especially when you start to look at these small businesses, really ends up putting the squeeze on them in two different ways, right? I look at a company like Vermont Frames, which is a timber frame home building company, and they're getting squeezed in when they're importing lumber from from Canada, and then they're getting squeezed when they're trying to run their digital marketing campaigns. And to not be able to have the right data to make sure that they're reaching the right people who actually want their product, I think puts them in a really difficult spot and puts them in a spot where they can't grow, where they can't provide a job that actually is a really traditional job in Vermont, right? A timber frame home builder or a timber frame carpenter, like that, those are hand-built frames, right? There are not a lot of people who do that. And so if this company doesn't survive, those people don't have work. And when I look at their data, right, like all of their business comes digitally, right? Whether their neighbor heard about it, they still are going online and looking for them. And so the idea of having only, say 25,000 Vermonters be the threshold on this bill doesn't really make a ton of sense, because when you actually look at it from a statistical analysis perspective, 25,000 people doesn't really give you enough to run a test of significance in the digital marketing landscape. Think about, if you say you have 25,000 people on an email list or in a retargeting list, right? Well, maybe if you've done an amazing job with your content and hit the content on the head and you're knocking the ball out of the ballpark, 10% of those people engage with that content. And then 10% of the people who engage are buyers. And again, like that's the best case scenario. We don't see that very often. If we saw that all the time, we'd be writing case studies about it every day. We don't see it very often. When we do, we tell everyone about it. So that means that if you have 25,000 people, that means really you only are looking at maybe 250 people who are qualified buyers out of that. That's not enough to run a business. You need more than 250 customers. So if you think about restaurants or coffee shops or, other small businesses around Vermont, 250 people aren't going to do it, right? And so we need to expand that out to give them a little bit more breathing room. They need to be able to, I think the 100,000 person mark makes a lot of sense. Because once you're actually able to go down the conversion path, you can start to see that you can start to build a profitable entity on that. And so I think that piece is certainly something that needs to be considered here. I know 25,000 people sounds like a lot, and obviously if you had 25,000 people in that room, that would be a ton, right? Nobody would be able to breathe, but but statistically speaking, it's not.
Yeah.
We do a lot of of data compliance with our clients. And it takes up a lot of time. And it's true that the bigger clients who have more resources, who have their own legal departments, can handle this better than the smaller clients. And there are good options out there to deal with this. But if we're giving people a private right to action and allowing, you know, Muddy Waters downtown in Burlington to be sued by just anybody, it really is like they're just not going to survive. Their margins are not big enough to make that work, and they need to be able to run targeted advertising to be successful. And I think a lot of times targeted advertising gets a bad rap, right? Like somehow it's creepy or people are feeling like they're being snooped upon. But the fact is that targeted advertising actually can be really beneficial to the consumer. I think, you know, all of us have our brand loyalties or have places that we want to, you know, go through self-growth, right? And as you start to really explore different areas, different products, having that target advertising really allows you to find the products and the services that really make sense for you. As opposed to just kind of having a bunch of stuff thrown at the wall and we just kind of like see what sticks. With that targeted advertising, you can really get a good understanding of of the value that company is providing, the veracity of the claims that they're making, because, you know, are the people they're targeting like you, or are they like somebody else that doesn't fit your ideal or their ideal client persona? So I think that's another piece that I think kind of like it gets a bad rap, but it is really important for us to, you know, as digital marketers, to be able to make use of targeted advertising. And I think it's valuable for the consumer as well. You know, finally, I'd like to say I do support you know, data privacy. I do think it's important, right? Like I think about, you know, think about myself and what I opt into, but the fact is that data privacy has to be done in a really thoughtful way. And I see that done in S71. And I'm pleased to see that. And I do feel like at this point we have the resources to deal with folks that are moving outside of that, and we don't want to leave it like to individuals, and we certainly as Vermont do not want to be I think to use Robbie's words, like a unique entity in this. I think that we should look at what is working and what is not working and make decisions based on that. So yeah, I think you know, in conclusion, I want to thank, you know, the committee for its support of the balanced approach and making sure that Vermont's regulations align with those of our neighboring states, and make sure that we can protect consumer privacy while supporting the businesses that drive our economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? So are you a data processor then?
We actually we don't qualify as a data processor because we do not store any data. All of that data is stored by our customers, so they end up being qualified as the data processor.
Okay, and so then are you a data broker?
No. No, we
Okay,
don't store any sort of third-party data.
so how would you characterize yourself?
We're an agency.
An
Right? So
agency. Okay, so like, all right, so,
we're an advertising agency.
okay, got it. All right. I guess I don't have any. Do you? Okay. So much to, all right. I won't go there. Thank you. If you can send us written testimony, that would be helpful.
Sure, happy to.
Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. I want to take a little break so let them come back.
Yeah, did they say how long?
I don't think they're gonna be that long. Do you have any idea? I think it would have been. I'm gonna say 20 minutes.